Welcome to another episode of SYNCcast powered by Commercient. I'm Heath McKnight. Joining me today is Gil Lantini, co-founder of Integrated Media Group. Gil, welcome. Appreciate you coming on the show today. How are you?
I'm great, Heath. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. Gil, I've spoken to you a few times, but I don't think I've ever really gotten to know you beyond just talking about Salesforce and everything. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and how you co-founded IMG and what IMG does.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for asking, Heath. So my background's in technology. First job out of college was actually as a software developer around Y2K. So if you remember, Y2K is when people thought that our electronics would just explode at midnight in 1999. That crossover, planes were going to crash. Yeah, it was none of which happened. But I was actually a software developer, and I was converting 2-digit years to 4-digit years. And they had something called lockup. You'd get locked in a room for like hours at a time. And you would just look at lines of code and convert those 2 to 4-digit years. It was not exciting at all. But what it opened my eyes to was web-based technology. So back, late 90s, early 2000s, the whole idea of software as a service and web-based technology was very new. So I actually had the opportunity to start building some web-based applications then. Coming out of that, so I was there for 5 years doing that as a full-time employee of in the insurance space. So started a web development company actually out of that. So kind of went from web-based software to building websites as a company, and did that for about 15 years or so. I sold that company. It was 2013. Then we started a business publication, very different than being in the web or software space, but saw a need in traditional print and then bringing a digital element to print. So we built up a business publication to be one of the largest in the area, both from a print and digital standpoint. Yeah. And then that led me to consulting, which, essentially saw a lot of opportunity in the digital marketing space coming from that print media, which then led me to start Integrated Media Group, which started as a digital marketing agency and now is a Salesforce partner. So a lot of what I did, I feel like was very related over the years, right? I think each step I took kind of led me from one thing to the next. So I think that progression has gotten me to where we are today.
Awesome. And I saw the news. Congratulations for making the Inc. 5000 company list. I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah, thank you. To me, while it would have been exciting anytime, the fact that we did it during these COVID years, which I think most businesses may have an asterisk around just because of so many factors, it was especially exciting with all the challenges we faced over the last 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, when you and I have spoken in the past about IMG, is branding, helping companies grow, and then integrating. And I think one thing companies, and I'm talking about enterprise down, they don't, well, maybe the enterprise focus a little bit more on the branding and cultivating it and keeping it fresh, but the smaller companies don't. How does branding help? Even the smallest company where it might just be 1 or 2 people running it, but hoping to grow that business.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, a lot of us forget that, so many brands are just in our head all the time, and we don't even have to think about it. We don't, we know what Domino's does, we know what McDonald's does, we know what Nike does, right? Whether or not we like them or don't like them, these brands have just been, ingrained in our minds and just what they do. And instantly you hear the name, Apple, Tesla, something comes to mind, innovation, technology, whatever it may be. Small businesses have the same, even though they can't reach or won't reach the same number of people, it's the same concept, right? If I'm a small business owner and I'm in the insurance space or I'm in manufacturing, I want my company name to evoke a sense in my prospects and in my clients. And that's what branding does, is it evokes that sense of, high quality customer service, competitive pricing, whatever those, core values are. That's what branding does. And that starts with, understanding who we are as a business, and then extends through our logo and our messaging and everything else related. So branding isn't just the logo. Branding is the sense that people get when they hear our company name. And I can't see any or many businesses where that's not going to provide value, because as we grow and scale, that's the backbone of who we are.
Absolutely. And maybe we could talk a little bit about marketing and how you help companies. And I think your journey is very interesting. In the past, I got started with writing. I was in the very independent, small budget film business, but I wrote about the technology. And first place was magazines, and then forums. I was addicted to forums, getting on the forums and commenting. And then it just, I think around 2014, 15, 16, we saw this just massive shift, and it had been going to digital, but it is just huge. And I even remember the early days, like 2010, 2011, where nobody knew, small businesses, friends of mine that have shops, they didn't know where to go. So they were putting their money on Yelp, Google, etc. But I think we're at a point where it's a little bit like we're concise, maybe. You can almost get rid of a lot of these other sites that were kind of there in the beginning with Facebook and Google kind of fighting. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about digital marketing and how IMG helps a company, especially a company kind of going back two people. Yeah. And they don't have a CMO. They are the CMO. They are everything. But, how does your company help them?
Yeah. So, really what we learned early on, so we went from, going back to the story of the Rhode Island Small Business Journal, we went from a print publication, built a very strong digital following. What we saw firsthand during those years of, 2013, 14, 15, to your point, was that there was this very conscious shift happening. It wasn't a matter of like, should we be here? It was a matter of we need to be here. So we saw firsthand that we were able to compete with some large, existing publications in the space that had been there for many years. We were able to outproduce them, from a content and reach standpoint, because we put such a strong emphasis on digital. And then our clients noticed that, and they were coming to us asking us if we could help them. And at the time, that wasn't part of our core service. It was just, we're a publication, you can pay us for advertising, but we're not a consulting agency. That really led us to starting IMG, because essentially we saw that there was this huge need, especially in small business, where companies knew they needed to post on social networks, they needed to send out emails. There were lots of opportunities with other digital advertising channels, and they didn't have the bandwidth, they didn't have the knowledge. There was just a lot of gaps. And when we started IMG, it was specifically to help small businesses with social media and email. I mean, that's really what our core was initially when we first launched. So you needed to be on Facebook and post organic content, LinkedIn, now Instagram. But at the time, it was Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and then it was email marketing. We had success in that space, just focusing on, local-ish small business. But, really what we learned as things grew was that, okay, those don't always have a tremendous amount of value. So, being on Facebook and posting is almost just like, you kind of need to do it, but it doesn't move the needle from a revenue standpoint, right? So it's shifted a lot. Originally, it did generate business, and now it's not. So Integrated Media Group now, and I know we'll talk about more of the Salesforce and technology side separately, in this conversation, but the agency side of our business is where we started. And, who we are as an agency now is, we help with, it's still social and email, but it's SEO and SEM, it's organic content, right? It's having the right messaging and content on your site to drive organic traffic. And then it's paid, paid search, paid social, using those channels to generate very targeted prospects for your business. So now, in addition to our web team and our branding team on the agency side, we're a full service outsourced marketing agency that can either help businesses that just need to supplement what their in-house staff can do. Maybe it's just some social content, or maybe it's just managing ads, or in some cases, it's full outsource marketing where these clients don't have anybody to do this. And it's small to mid-sized companies. There's nobody internally that this is their job, and they're outsourcing it to us as a full-time outsourced agency.
Gotcha. That's incredible, and a great segue into Salesforce. And you have probably heard this story. If they're not using a very basic CRM or a built-in CRM as part of their ERP accounting software, they're using Post-it notes, they're using spreadsheets. And when I speak to these companies with the asterisks, if we forget about COVID, before that, their sales were flat. They were just kind of there. They're minimal growing or even losing sales. How does Salesforce in digital transformation help these companies to grow and get back on track, or even open up new sales channels and everything? And then also, if you could tell me how IMG helps them with that journey, because that is something that's not just here's your software, here's your training. That is a new philosophy, a new way of looking at sales and the pipeline, et cetera.
Yeah, so it's such an important question to ask, and I feel like it's something that a lot of people are just not thinking about, even still, with the changes over the last few years. So, to really dive into that, first part of the question, just around, why that digital transformation. I think if you look at what we do as an agency, right? We're generating leads for clients, right? We don't know what happens with those leads. We're just generating interest for their brand. If there's no systems in place, we have no idea how it impacted the bottom line, what sales reps are doing to follow up. There's just this huge black hole. So when we're hired just as an agency, it's not our job to know what happens after. Clients are just hiring us to get the interest there. But if you think of the impact that has on a business internally, so an owner is paying an agency to generate leads, and maybe they're not, maybe they're doing it internally. That doesn't matter. The fact is, businesses have leads coming in, and then they have no systems to manage who gets the lead when it comes in, how fast is it responded to, what happens after the interaction, how many interactions were there, when do we send out a quote, did we send out a quote, did we close that business and earn that business, and oh, by the way, what campaign actually generated that lead to begin with. So there's all these metrics that you just can't measure without having the proper technology in place. So, we continue to see this. It's not that it's just been a trend, over the last several years. We're still seeing it, right? So what I did notice is that during, once COVID hit, clients knew technology was going to be more important because they were working remote and they needed systems to tie people together. So I think that facilitated this, move to digital transformation for a lot of businesses that maybe weren't thinking about the things I'm talking about, but knew they needed something. So, now if we fast forward, 2.5 years or so, we're seeing clients that have adopted CRM because, again, to your point about having an ERP, clients were running off an ERP, like their whole business was built on an ERP system, but those systems aren't sales focused, they're not marketing focused. They're operations focused, order focused, it's accounting. So yes, it's back office, but the gap for a lot of these businesses was that they weren't seeing how the sales team could interact with that data or the marketing team could interact with that data. So this shift of, I have an operations system, but that's kind of it, or I have a marketing agency and that's kind of it. This CRM technology in general kind of lives in the middle and then can facilitate all these conversations and talk to these other solutions. So it's such a vital and important part of a technology stack within an organization. And we're seeing, again, from a variety of different angles, different industries, different use cases, but it is so important to have. And we really are seeing the impact it's having on businesses when they have the right technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have spoken to your team before, and it sounds like they talk to the customer, they listen, they figure out what their processes have been, and then they take them on that journey. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how IMG really helps the customer beyond just, like I was saying, the software and the training and everything. And you touched upon a lot of it, but I think what could a customer expect?
So I think what businesses don't realize is that the conversation around technology, CRM technology, isn't just about finding the right software to use and plugging it in, right? This conversation has to start way before that. So when we're talking to our clients or prospects at that point, they're evaluating CRM and they're coming to us. And our conversation is specifically around, you need to document your business process first. And what are you doing outside of technology? And then what other technology you're using, right? You need to come to the table as a business with that in mind, because plugging into CRM is not going to have value unless you've already defined your business processes and your tech stack, your current tech stack, whether it's ERP or other, accounting software or whatever it may be. So when we're working with a client, it's documenting that process. It's documenting, again, their current business processes, their sales processes. It's documenting their technology that's in place today, what technology needs to talk to each other. So before we even focus on CRM, we're having conversations specifically around the other stuff, right? And I think that the mindset of a client evaluating CRM is just thinking, I need somewhere to put my data. I have spreadsheets, I have Post-it notes, to your point. But that's, that is really underutilizing the technology that they're looking at. And really, to get the value out of it, we need to have conversations about, again, current process, but then big picture. Where do we want to take this? Where does the company want to be in 3 years, 5 years from now? What users are going to be in the system, and what are their roles going to be? So it's really understanding the business, understanding the users within the business, and then starting to put a plan together on how we're going to implement that based on what we're hearing from them. So it's a much more consultative process than just, buying a Salesforce license, setting up 3 users and saying, here you go, start using CRM. We see when that happens, we see a ton of adoption issues, right? People are just saying, well, why am I even using this? And then we just see, again, a lot of underutilization of the technology when there's not somebody there helping all along.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about Commercient SYNC integrating data from ERP/accounting system to Salesforce, how is that important for the sales team and also the marketing team?
So, if you really think about ERP integration, so ERP has all of our order data, our accounting data. It knows so much about our clients, right? So from a sales perspective, imagine having the insight of, okay, I have this great customer who was a great customer last year. I think they're still a great customer, but oh wait, I didn't realize they haven't ordered in 12 months, 6 months, whatever the time frame is, right? So part of it is really understanding buyer behavior and understanding, where our prospects are or where our customers are, what they've spent, what they've bought in the past, what they could be buying. So from a sales perspective, having that information is super helpful. From a marketing perspective, same thing applies. If I have a client that I should be nurturing or building a relationship with digitally, I'm only going to know to do that if I have the insight as to what they bought in the past and what they could potentially buy in the future. Maybe they have an open balance and sales should be, there's so many factors that having that insight from a sales and marketing standpoint, it's so valuable. But what we see is that clients who have an ERP, it's really just the accounting team and it's somebody entering an order. And ERP systems are typically not opened up to the entire team for lots of other functionality. They're typically used for inventory, order management, and accounting, but not for sales outreach, and marketing. And having that data at your fingertips in a CRM is really going to help not only improve sales, but give the marketing team something to build campaigns off of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you and I spoke in the past, I think you said it really with Sync, it Salesforce for the sales team, and maybe to a degree the marketing team, becomes that single source of truth. And probably more importantly, they're not spread out on different apps as well. They're getting it all at once. I actually spoke to somebody in accounting, a very small company who was also in charge of operations. And I asked her, from your perspective, what is so great? And she said, well, if they need something as simple as did this address change to something as complex as can you create a report, which in an ERP compared to Salesforce, it's like night and day. They actually have to stop what they're doing, get that report, get that new address and send it over. Now they can the sales team can pull that up. And then on the other side of the coin, when they're entering updated or new information into Salesforce customer, maybe a sales order, changing addresses, we're syncing that back to accounting. So they're not double data entering. They're not hitting the wrong number and this poor company's package is going to their neighbor down the street. I wanted to ask from a perspective of getting the most out of Salesforce, what would be your top 3 to 5 tips?
Yeah. So, there's a lot, but if we're looking top 3 to 5, I think first, and I mentioned it before, but document your processes and the technology you're using before you do anything in CRM. Don't even log in until you have processes documented and your technology outlined and your goals outlined, because you're just going to get lost in the technology. So tip number one, before you even sign a license agreement with a software provider, you need to have all that documented. Super important. I think the second thing is your team's adoption and buy-in is just as important or more important than your vision for the software, right? So if I'm a CEO of a manufacturing company and my team has just been using ERP and really is not even using technology for a lot, and I go out and spend all this money on Salesforce, they're not going to use it, right? They're not going to understand why it's important. So I need them to understand that digital transformation is important, but not only is it important, but here's why. And you need them to understand that you're not creating extra work for them. You're going to make them more efficient and give them more opportunity by rolling this out. And you want their feedback, you want their buy-in. So I think just making sure the team is on board before you go ahead and start spending all this time and money. Now, that's not to say you want the team to have feedback on everything all the time, because that's going to create other challenges as a CEO or as somebody that's going to run or lead this process. You need to define what's going to go into it and not take every piece of feedback and try to incorporate it all. But you need people on the team to know that this is something that they're involved with, and help them understand that it's not just extra work for them, that there's going to be value there. So getting the team buy-in is a really important tip that I'd have for anybody. Just a couple other quick ones. So the other is that setting the mindset that if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. This is something we hear all the time, and Salesforce says it. It's kind of one of the things that they're telling clients. We tell clients the same thing. I have clients that tell their staff the same thing. You need people to understand that this is now a single source of truth for everything. So if it's not there, I don't care that you called, Susie Smith yesterday, because I don't know that you did. If it's not in Salesforce, I just want to see it and have it documented. Having you tell me that you did it doesn't really give me what I need. I can't build a report on what you're telling me, right? So it has to be in Salesforce in order to really document that it happened, whether that's a meeting, a call, an email, any interaction. And then last, I would just say, know that this is an iterative process going in, right? Get feedback from the team as you go and iterate and constantly evolve. You're not just going to build the CRM and walk away and say, okay, everything is done for the next 12 months or 16 months. I typically tell my clients, plan 2 to 3 months out, right? How do you want to be using this 3 months from now? Don't think about how you want to use it 3 years from now. Because if we think about the 3-year vision now as we're building it, there's so many things we're going to get wrong, right? If we think about the 3-month or the 6-month vision, we could probably nail that pretty close, and then evolve and then spend more time adopting and building on the platform, right? But don't think too far out. Just think of, what do I need to get up and running? What's important for now that's going to be better than what I had? And then continue to evaluate and get feedback.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And this will be my last question. If a company decides we're just going to dive into Salesforce on our own without a consultant, what would you tell them? Now, if you ask me, I'd say probably get a consultant like IMG and partner. But is there any advice that you could pass along to them? And they are coming into this very cold.
Right. The challenge. So Salesforce and other CRM providers have the model of bringing in partners because they know that user adoption and client retention is higher, right? So not even speaking from my own experience, but speaking from how I know Salesforce, who obviously is a very successful company, largest in their space, they rely on the partner model because they know that the clients that don't have partners are the ones that typically are not renewing or aren't as happy with the product, right? So just knowing that that's their model really speaks volumes to the fact that it is important to have a consultant or someone that's been through this before. It doesn't have to be someone that does everything for you. Maybe it's just someone to guide you along the way, and you have somebody in-house that's really doing some of the work. So a business doesn't have to go in as an all or nothing mentality, like I either hire someone to do everything or I can't hire somebody. I'd say look at consultants, and it's something that we take a lot of pride in. Clients may just buy a handful of hours from us, 5 hours, 10 hours, or they may want us to do everything. But we're flexible to understand that everybody has different needs. But I do think having someone to speak to is going to really make this a lot more of a successful endeavor, because you do need someone that's not only been there before, but has seen what other businesses are doing to help bring that to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of brings me back many, many years ago when I made the leap from video editing tape to tape to nonlinear when Apple put out their Final Cut Pro. And I sat there, a whole new way of thinking. And I ended up hiring somebody who knew, they were familiar, but they knew nonlinear editing. And that got me started. Otherwise, I would have abandoned it. And that, to me, it seems like it is, and that's just a one piece of software. This is like a whole new way of thinking. I love if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. And that's something that I think I totally agree that companies need to be able to have somebody, like you said, even if it's just helping a little bit, it keeps them going. And that's one thing that we hear a lot is without that consulting partner, our adoption wouldn't have happened. We would have just moved on and back to spreadsheets, Post-it notes, legal pads, et cetera.
Right.
So, Gil, how can they find out more about you and IMG?
Yeah, so we just launched a new website, which we're pretty excited about. So that's
Awesome.
at growwithimg.com. So growwithimg.com. My email is Gil, Gil at growwithimg.com. But yeah, I encourage you to check out our website because again, we spent a lot of time on that and launched that within the past week or so. Yeah, really excited to now send people there. Before I used to tell people not to go, but now I'm happy to have people go to our site. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Gil. Really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Heath. Really glad to be here and appreciate the opportunity to talk more about this. So thanks so much.
Thank you for tuning in to SYNCcast powered by Commercient. Learn more about ERP and CRM integration with Commercient SYNC by logging on to commercient.com.